Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you are looking into and we pull out the key insights, those bits that make you feel really informed, but, without getting totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, wading through it all.
Exactly. And this time, you've pointed us towards something pretty deep. Pietro Ubaldi's Fall and Redemption.
And what's really striking right off the bat is how this book even came about. Ubaldi basically said it landed on him almost overnight.
Landed on him, like downloaded.
Sort of. A flood of ideas he felt he wasn't making up, but discovering. Like the logic was already there, waiting.
Wow. Okay. And you can almost see that in how he wrote it, right? This three-stage process.
Yeah, exactly. All handwritten in Portuguese. First, a quick sketch, like a general outline.
Okay.
Then a much more detailed draft, using that first sketch as a base.
Right, fleshing it out.
And finally, a more structured, sort of reasoned presentation of it all. You really get a sense of the ideas crystallizing.
And this came after his earlier big works, Great Synthesis and God and Universe.
That's right. It seems like his time in Brazil, really observing the natural world, the biological world, it gave him a new angle, made him rethink things.
So our mission for this deep dive is to get our heads around Ubaldi's system in Fall and Redemption. We're looking at his ideas on the universe's origin, this key concept of a fall from a perfect system, let's just call it S.
Good shorthand.
Into this imperfect anti-system, AS. And then, crucially, the way back, the path to salvation or redemption through evolution.
And it's worth noting why he wrote it. He wasn't just philosophizing in a vacuum. He wanted to offer something solid.
Like a roadmap.
Exactly. The clear vision of our destiny, he said. Firm support, a certain path, a secure goal. And he felt this came from living by the law of God, something he'd wrestled with himself,
Right. And offering it to fellow travelers, people seeking happiness, like you listening might be.
Precisely.
Okay, let's jump into one of his first big ideas. Knowledge. He says we don't create it.
Right. It's more that we uncover it. We discover truths that are already there, pre-existing.
Yeah, that's a big thought. So intuition, inspiration. That's us tapping into this. And it depends on how evolved we are.
That's the idea. Your evolutionary maturity influences your ability to perceive these truths. Think about it means all problems, in a way, are already solved.
We just haven't found the solutions yet.
Exactly. Humanity is just progressively uncovering them as we mature, as our intuition gets sharper, peeling back the layers.
Which leads us straight to the core, doesn't it? The system, S, and the anti-system, AS. This duality.
Absolutely fundamental. You can't really grasp the rest without it. The system, S, is the original state. Perfection, God, pure positivity.
Okay, the ideal.
And the anti-system, AS, is the result of, well, he calls it a revolt or a fall. Its essence is negativity.
So it's not just a slight imbalance. It's the foundation of our reality, this split.
It's the foundational structure, yes. Think of S as perfect harmony and AS as the introduction of fundamental discord.
And this fall kicks off two movements, involution and evolution. They sound opposite.
They are, but they're connected. Involution is the movement away from S, down into the negativity of AS.
Like falling deeper.
Sort of, yeah, or like descending into complexity and materiality. Then evolution is the opposite journey, the climb back towards S, towards positivity.
Driven by what?
Driven by that original creative impulse, the inherent drive to recover what was lost, to return to God. Ubaldi sees them as a cycle, descent and ascent, like sickness and healing.
Okay, so this fall, it wasn't an accident. What caused it and what happened right after?
He suggests it came from a desire to grow outside the order of S, a kind of ambition to go it alone, to be independent from the perfect harmony.
Pride, maybe?
Could be interpreted that way. This act plunged beings into AS, into negativity, and they lost their treasure, that state of pure positivity.
And the deeper they went.
The more they missed it, the longing to get back that positivity grew stronger. But here's the twist. Because they were in that rebellious mindset, they tried to find it by going deeper into the negativity.
Looking in the wrong place.
Exactly. Which, of course, just diminished the positivity even further. A real paradox.
So they want to go up, but they keep digging down.
Yeah.
Is there an escape mechanism, this law of return?
Yes, the wisdom of the law of return. It's subtle. The deeper you go into AS, the greater the feeling of lack becomes. That inherent desire for the true satisfaction of S gets stronger.
Because the AS isn't actually satisfying.
Right. It offers less and less real fulfillment. So the law doesn't force you back. It respects free will, but it kind of nudges. It indirectly guides you towards salvation because the yearning for S becomes overwhelming. The compass needle still points north.
But what if someone just refuses,
Yeah.
digs in their heels, stays in revolt definitively. Does the law just let that happen? Could a being just cease to exist? Yeah.
That's a heavy question, and Ubaldi tackles it. He says, yes, destruction is possible, but it's not God destroying them. It's the natural consequence of persistently using freedom negatively.
So self-destruction in a way.
Kind of, but importantly, it's the individual's specific identity, their personal I, that gets destroyed or dissolved, not the underlying essence that belongs to the system or that's part of others on the path back. That energy isn't lost, it just rejoins the whole.
Okay, so evolution is the climb back. What powers that climb if negativity took hold initially?
Evolution is precisely that ascent from AS back to S. It's fueled by negativity diminishing and by what Ubaldi calls compressed positivity.
Compressed positivity, like potential energy.
Exactly like that. Potential locked within the negative state, wanting to spring back. He argues, quite interestingly, that the initial win for negativity actually makes the eventual evolutionary reaction stronger. Like compressing a spring really tightly, the rebound is more powerful.
Well, let's talk about ethics. Our ideas of right and wrong change so much. How does Ubaldi fit that into this S and AS model?
He sees our current human ethics as relative to where we are on the evolutionary ladder.
So not the final word.
Definitely not. They're an approximation, a step towards the universal ethics of the law of God. The changes we see in ethics throughout history, that's just evolution happening. Different relative ethics are just moments, adaptations of the same universal ethics suited for each stage.
What about all the conflict in the world, the struggle of all against all, as some philosophers put it? Where does that come from, in his view?
Directly from the initial revolt. That's split into S and AS. Conflict is a symptom of the anti-system's influence.
But it's temporary.
Yes. A temporary phase within the bigger picture, the larger monism dominated by the law. And crucially, Ubaldi insists the positive impulse, God's will for salvation, is ultimately stronger than the negative impulse that caused the fall. He even says the seed of salvation was planted in the fall itself.
That's hopeful. Okay, error and pain, they feel pretty negative. How can they be part of a path back to positivity?
Ubaldi reframes them. Error is moving away from the law, which naturally leads to loss. Pain, though, is different. It's a correction in pain.
A correction, like a slap on the wrist.
Maybe more like a feedback signal, a sharp one. It's designed to redirect you back towards the law, towards recovery. So error leads to loss, but pain ultimately points towards salvation.
So it's necessary, a mechanism to restore balance when we mess up.
A necessary mechanism, yes, for reestablishing the equilibrium we violated by straying from the order.
So trying to find happiness through negativity, through revolt, it's just illogical in this framework.
Fundamentally illogical. He calls it an absurdity, really. True positivity, real happiness, only comes from fixing the negativity, turning it back into positivity, by obeying the law. The revolt itself was based on a flawed premise.
And God's role in all this is God actively steering things moment to moment.
Ubaldi presents God as the constant, the fixed point of pure positivity. It's the revolt, the movement into AS that takes on the negative sign relative to God's unchanging positivity.
So evolution is about getting back in sync with that reference point.
Exactly, realigning with the constant positive pull.
This law, it sounds like more than just rules, it's the fabric of the system.
It is the positivity of the system. It embodies order, balance, justice. The struggle, the conflict we see, that's the attempt to impose the disorder of the AS onto the inherent order of the law.
And pain is the friction.
Precisely. The friction between the law's will for order and the individual will pushing for disorder, like rubbing against the grain of reality.
In getting back, redemption, it requires work. Suffering, even.
Very much so. Redemption happens through pain, according to Ubaldi. Pain is the teacher. It forces learning, leads to knowledge, and eventually obedience. Rebuilding what was broken by the revolt needs real effort, sacrifice, no free passes.
You mentioned evolution having an endpoint, W1. Is that like the end of time?
Not annihilation, no. It's the point where the relative world, our world of dimensions and separation, dissolves. It's a return to the absolute, a reintegration into the system. Ubaldi sees the whole AS phase as a kind of temporary detour, a parenthesis in the infinite life of S, and that parenthesis has to close.
Okay. He also talks about evolution creating bigger and bigger collective units. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a key trend he sees. Evolution moves towards forming larger collectives, greater unification, and also towards more spiritualization.
Meaning?
Meaning matter is just the appearance, the surface level. Spirituality is the real substance. So this drive towards bigger, more unified groups reflects that underlying pushback towards the unity of the system.
And the ethics change as evolution progresses. You mentioned A2, A3, A4.
Right, different biotypes, different evolutionary levels. A2 might be the beast driven by self-interest and struggle. A3 is kind of where current humanity is, more complex, but still often egocentric. A4 represents more evolved beings.
Who operate differently.
Yeah, on principles like collaboration, altruism, less focused on self. What's right or best ethically depends entirely on the level. You can't apply A4 ethics directly to A2 or vice versa. It wouldn't fit.
So, divine justice. It's not about punishment like we think of it.
Not really punitive, no. It's inherent in the law structure. It's automatic. If you make an error, move away from the law, there are consequences. Pain can be one. But it's not a sentence handed down. It's the system self-correcting, guiding you back towards salvation, an intrinsic feedback loop.
He also talks about the strength of good versus evil, right? How does that play out?
He contrasts the true strength of those aligned with the law, even if they seem weak or unarmed, like in the Gospels, with the ultimate weakness of worldly power based on negativity.
So power built on the AS is inherently unstable.
Ultimately, yes. He even suggests things like forgiveness, which might seem weak or absurd from an AS perspective, are actually powerful methods operating on the law's level, returning negativity to its source.
And in this whole battle,
Yeah.
it's happening inside us too.
Constantly. The internal struggle between the AS negativity, evil, and the S positivity, good. The ultimate goal is for God's unifying will, the pull of S, to win out.
What about our constant wanting? Always chasing the next thing. Is that part of this?
Ubaldi sees that endless cycle of desire in our world as actually a mechanism used by the law.
How so? It seems like chasing illusions.
It often is for the individual.
Yeah.
But the process of striving, of constantly seeking more, ensures continuous effort. It keeps pushing us, even unconsciously, towards evolutionary progress, towards God. The law uses our illusions to guide us towards reality.
So even pain, it's ultimately beneficial.
In this view, yes. Not malicious. It's a tool, a teacher. Compelling evolution, especially when we aren't consciously aware of the law yet and wouldn't move otherwise.
So the key is understanding.
Absolutely. Real freedom, real progress comes from understanding the law and consciously aligning with it. Moving from revolt and ignorance to knowledge and obedience, that's the path.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into Ubaldi's fall and redemption, it's been quite a journey. From perfection through this fall into duality, struggle, suffering, and then this long climb back, evolution, guided by this universal law.
Yeah, it's a huge framework. Trying to explain, well, pretty much everything. Why there's conflict, why there's pain, how ethics evolve. It all fits into this S and AS dynamic.
It definitely offers a structure, a way to maybe see order in what looks like chaos.
Yeah.
A sense of purpose, maybe, rooted in this idea of fall and redemption.
That's certainly what Ubaldi aimed for, a coherent picture, a path forward.
It gives you a lot to chew on. So maybe a final thought for you, listening. Think about these concepts, the system and the anti-system, this tension. Could it offer a new lens for looking at your own challenges or even, the big conflicts out there in the world?
Mm-hmm.
What if those struggles aren't just random noise? What if they're part of this larger cosmic story? Ubaldi describes this dynamic of fall and redemption.
It's a powerful perspective to consider.
Definitely. We'd encourage you to explore fall and redemption more if this sparked your interest. See how these ideas sit with your own experiences, your own worldview. It's quite an exploration.